Hi YouTube, I hope you're all doing good. I'm doing okay, not too bad. It was about 79 degrees at 9 o'clock this morning. I got out and got the kitties fed and some other work done, and yeah, I'm gonna just make some coleslaw and maybe some shrimp for supper, but just getting the coleslaw done is going to be a big deal for me. So, um, I usually would I was thinking of using my food processor, but I don't even want to worry about washing that. So I'm just going to chop it up and then grate some carrot in it, or not grade, but grate. So, yeah, I used to work at a sawmill where we graded lumber, you know. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, so Hunter Biden got charges of not paying the taxes that he can pay and catch up on, and getting a gun that he wasn't supposed to get. And that's okay for somebody like him because he's the president's son, and anybody else would be in prison probably for 10 years or something just on the gun charges, or maybe not nowadays because a lot of big cities are letting their criminals out to run around, so maybe. But I think he's going to take off and we won't hear anything from him again. And I don't see that any of those dealings that he did with his dad in Ukraine and China or anything, I don't think anything's ever going to happen to them people for being treasonous towards the United States. This is treason. That's punishable by death, you know, and all their worldly goods confiscated and the loss of their citizenship. Like, that would matter if you're dead, you know. But I mean, the possibilities of what really could happen if they were anybody else besides deep state crime towards the rest of us in the United States. That's what my topic is today, is how the rest of the world looks at us. Oh, just a minute, I gotta tell you something. Just one moment. So, I went to listen to George Galloway. And he's in London, I believe. He's I think Scottish, and he looks like he's maybe part Sicilian, perhaps, but maybe not. But I think he is. Neither here nor there. All roads lead to Rome, one of those. So I go over there and I'm going to listen what's happening on the international stage. I get over there and there's a live stream, and it's asked if basically the character of the I can't remember how it was worded, but do we think that the United States is dangerous? Well, I had no choice but to put yes, and then I could proceed into the chat if I wanted to. Well, what am I going to say after that? I'm already convicted of the reflection that our president and that cabinet has put on the rest of the people of the United States. So anything I say in my defense is going to look combative. I would say, if I wanted to say, we don't even approve of what's going on, but that wouldn't even matter. Who's going to listen to anybody that's already convicted in their eyes? It's not what the United States is going to do. It's what the world leaders are doing. It's not us. There's nobody that I know in my life, anybody I've met, anybody I've talked to, that approves of any kind of war. There just isn't. if there is, they aren't saying it to me because they would know better, you know. But so I was really thoroughly ashamed of the United States once again, and not just my country, but all world leaders that put their citizens in the position of looking like murderous trash to the rest of the world. And that isn't even who we are when we wouldn't even harm anybody. I mean, yes, we have, and here I go, we have retards that will join the military and they're all gung-ho to kill for their country. Yes, you're retarded. There's no other word. Thou shalt not kill, make your excuses, retard. I don't give a. I don't care what you did in the past. If you can realize that you were being used, and if you don't realize that, you're still being used. So hopefully, if there's any military here or ex-military, I defend people, so I am not against defense or self-defense. I'm against going into other countries on the say-so of the deep state and the dark cabal that use people in those areas, and that's all it's been my whole life. One, either Cold War or the threat of war, one thing right after another continuously. I mean, when we have to sit back and watch our country and other countries put numbers on world wars, isn't that a little disturbing? Yeah. Well, I was embarrassed and I was hurt. It's like, wow, I can't even defend myself. And I'm put in that position all the time. It's like people that are going to come up and they'll push you, push you, push you. Well, if you push back, well, they could call the cops. Well, she just pushed me. It wasn't that I got pushed for a week straight by somebody and I couldn't take anymore and it was in the same spot and it kept hurting. It wasn't that I defended myself. It was because they were the ones that called. So basically what we were called and what was called on us, we have no defense. No defense, none. We have to take responsibility of what our government is doing, whether we like what they're doing or not. Yeah, well, I'm not too happy about it. So, like I said, I didn't even say anything, and then I thought later George Galloway had another video, and I thought about writing something on there, and I thought, what good is it going to do? These people already, I mean, they know it's the government's. So to pit people against each other, even in a live stream, it was off-putting. And I really highly doubt that I probably am going to unsub unless there's something super extraordinary, and I doubt that he would listen to me. But if there were something to change his way of thinking and put it back on our governments instead of the people personally, do we think the United States is dangerous? No more than England, the UK. What do you think? Yeah. I'm going to leave out calling names that I feel like calling right now. I'll leave it right there. Yeah, because we're all so righteous, right? Yeah. Well, I'm putting it in the hands of the deep state and the dark cabal, and the United States is not the government. We are not represented by our government officials anymore. Not at all. This doesn't even resemble the America I grew up in. Not even close. So, yeah. This country doesn't even care about their women and children anymore. You think they're being led by righteous men or women? Not at all. The laws that have been implemented and the things that can be done to children now in my country, we're not America anymore. And I want somebody, if rabbi that I listen to, if you're hearing this, I want you to explain to me the Noahide laws, how you see them. Explain to me how a young girl that isn't even able to take care of her own finances, vote, legally drink or smoke or anything like that, has the ability to have sex with an adult man no matter the age that he is, as long as he can fit his erection inside of her. I want you to just explain that part of the laws and don't tell me they aren't in there. I've read it myself. I was really thankful for the Rex Bear Leak Project put out the information I've been talking about, Eve being raped, the whole deal of Satan trying to remake God on this planet to keep control over everybody, and exactly what's going on here, and why people like me came working with the Christ Spirit to put an end to all this. And that's exactly what's going on. Those are the papers I read when I was young, and I told you that there was very few copies, and I was lucky to even be able to read some of the libraries that I was that were. If some of you don't know, and I'm not bragging, but I would not have my education like I have it if it wasn't for my dad, who called himself the Minneapolis Jew of that heritage, that had moved to other countries because that's what they do, to infiltrate everybody. But he was a 3-time over Grand Pass Master of the Masonic Lodge of the Freemasons, with Shriner's rights, meaning that he had studied and passed to master their lodge, and a Jesuit. So, and my adopted mother was a worthy matron Eastern Star. So yeah, my training and my understanding of all the Masonic workings and all their literature and everything I had access to. And I wrote in the book of Gematria before people started polluting it with their nonsense, which really goes along with the Dark Cabal and people that were born after me with my same numbers. It's just like Satan is going to pretend he's God because he's got the same Gematrian numbers, identical to Christ, identical to mine. Identical. There is no difference. The only difference is there's some, if you go deeper into the numbers, like 6, 7 pages in, with numbers that pertain to like me before some of these critters were even born, like the number 914, for instance, or 2418, or 2008, ones that they don't possess, that they don't have their filthy little gematria fingers in online, which isn't the real book of gematria. The real book of gematria is handwritten, believe it or not. So what's going on with the rest of it? It's satanic. Yeah, well, it's satanic anyway, our language and our numbers and all that. Yeah. And it's geometrical. It lines up, but it's just like, guess what? We found out that MC squared, Einstein's theory of relativity, is off by some degrees. What does that mean? That means that the mathematics are off. Now, they can finagle them to try and make them look righteous, but if something's off on a measurement, you don't have the exact thing. That's Satan's mistake, because he tried to recreate what God already did, and there is no matching it. There's no numbers to describe God's creations. That's a spiritual thing. You can't put a number on it, you know? And I know I missed part of that equation. I'm not going to strain my brain right now. It's like, no, just forget it. I think you got my point. But it is true. What I'm telling you is true. The online book of Gematria isn't the real one. Although it was copied, like my maiden name and my name, I'm in there from when I was a little kid. And some of the things I answered was, how do I feel about my birth mother? And I said I hate her. And I wish she was, no, I hate my dead mom is what I said. Well, she wasn't dead, but when I met her, I found out she was. Isn't that odd? If you know what I mean. I was a little kid, give me a break. Every day, and especially on my birthday, I always waited for one of my real parents to come and get me, because I felt like it must have been some grand mistake that I had been put in a family of my enemies. I thought, how could this possibly be? Because I knew God loved me. I thought, why would you do this to me? But then I realized when I got older that I actually had done it to myself, to volunteer to help straighten things up. So, but yeah, I had a few angry years in between 15 and 18. I was pretty horrible. I mean, as far as not really horrible to people or anything like that, but I had thoughts of getting like a Tommy gun and walking downtown and just taking a bunch of people out. I really did. But that was because of how I was raised and what they wanted me to do. They wanted me to lose my soul. Is what they wanted me to do. It isn't that I didn't believe in God. I did. That's why I didn't do anything. But I felt like that. After years and years of abuse and having to go out on my own to get away from the abuse when I was a little kid, I was angry. Oh, yeah. It's the truth. I'm just telling you about that so you can have a deeper understanding of my combative nature. So, and it's nothing that I do to anybody that doesn't do something to me first. I never strike first, never. Not with my words, nothing. I don't. I'll wait till you do something to me and I'll just watch it. I'll let you do a few things, keep watching. And then someday when I can't take any more, something will probably happen, and that's still not my fault. Although I try not to let my flesh get weak like that. But I've never put my hands on anybody. I have never walked up. Okay, I can't say never. I saw this thing. My friend's baby was sitting on the couch, a toddler, next to the father with the babysitter. And my friend and I walked in, and I ganked that bitch out of that house and threw her down by her bike and popped her tires with my jackknife and made her walk 17 miles to her house, to her home. And the next day, and this was when I was 17, I went there and asked her mom if I could talk to her. And I went in there. I said, if you go around them people anymore or mess with me, when I get out of jail, I'm going to come back and finish what I started. It was as simple as that. So, yeah, I wasn't the nice person in the world, is what I'm trying to say. But I still was defending somebody, if that's any kind of an excuse. But that'll give you kind of some insight of how I operate if I'm not thinking straight. So. And my friend and I had just gone to pick out my wedding dress for my first marriage that I had annulled. So technically, I've only been married twice, but I had to advertise in a newspaper. Oh, geez, I can't remember how long, for like something like 6 months or something, in 2 different states. The state I was in and the state I came from, or the state that he fled to, one of the two. So I picked the one I was in and the one we had come from, and advertised in the newspaper my intent for a divorce, and then it was granted to me. Well, the annulment, like it never happened. Yeah, right. Yikes. This dude was ex-cop, ex-military, freaking no words for the brutality of my broken ribs and jaw and the rest of the stuff. I have no words. I think he's probably dead now. So, maybe. Hopefully he's not harming other people. I'm just lucky I didn't have children with him. The one I did have children with, yeah, he was just as bad in his own ways. Worse when it comes to the damage he did to his children. So, yeah. So anyway, just kind of give you a little insight of my combative nature, and it is out of love. So, and I was freaked. I walked in, I saw that little baby bouncing on the couch by the dad and the babysitter, and I was so fucking disgusted. And I really didn't even hurt the girl. See, that's the thing. What I could have done, well, yeah, whatever. Anybody can, right? Yeah, I wasn't quite like that. Even the dude, he was so scared he went and locked himself in the garage. His name was Claude, and I kept asking him, just come out. I said, I hate your little weasel ass, you son of a bitch. And my ex is like, we should just go. I said, and we were forming a band. He played keyboard and shit, there was something else. I forget it right now. Anyway, so that didn't work out too well. But they did end up, they stood up for me at my wedding, you know. So anyway, that was so long ago. Even my dress looked like such a princess dress the whole day. Boy, I was stupid. Wow. So anyway, you know, that kind of folds into what I was talking about, older men marrying girls that don't have the mental maturity to be parents or actually even married at that age. And I was very mature with a job in my own home, and I was building my own car. I had already raised my own horse, and I had been breaking horses for a living and riding in the rodeo. So I mean, I wasn't a slouch. I wasn't, and I already had been into nursing, and I was busy, you know. So it wasn't like I didn't have abilities out on the world, and that I was just some reckless, mindless twit out there, you know. But my point is, there's a reason why there is an age limit for people to be married, and the Noahide laws that are signed into our laws. by President Trump, and before him, I think it was Carter. Reagan and Carter, I think both. It's something like every 12 years they sign them into law, and I don't know why. I guess I'd have to go back and look into that again. But that is true. They do that, and that's what it's all about. Little more, too. It said that Trump was more into bringing the country back around to being its own corporation, the Nasara thing, with giving people, like, if we invest with our social security number, the stocks that they use, like we're bonded, and the money that goes off of that has been going into these power-hungry moguls and the big banksters and whatnot, instead of going to the people. Like if you run a business and you have extra, you invested in, you have extra, that's supposed to go to the people. And Trump was going to implement that. That's what JFK wanted to do, and it said that's why he was assassinated, because he wanted to do some of the same thing Trump wanted to do. Well, I have a personal outlook on that whole thing because of the way I used to watch the way his wife looked at him. I mean, he's cheating with Marilyn Monroe out in the public eye, and you think that woman didn't have a look on her face when she was out in public with that? Think again. Just think about that. That just, humiliation. And this is the richest woman in the world at the time, Jacqueline Onassis Kennedy. It's just my theory that she had something to do with taking him out. She didn't even look shocked when he had his head blown off right next to her. She didn't even flinch. Go back and look at it. Not a flinch. The normal woman, she would have been like, oh, she'd have been grabbing him and like, oh God, the love of my life. She's like, oh dude, you're gonna bleed on my skirt, which she changed later when she talked to the reporters and whatnot. I mean, I don't blame her. I wouldn't have run around with a skirt with blood on it either. But there's some, where'd she get the spare one? Almost immediately. I don't know, just a few little weird things about the case. And I was too little to really understand what was going on back then. I think, like, what was it, in 65? 6? Around there. So, somewhere around in there, or was it 64? I don't know. But it really was kind of a shocker, The whole world was. And then right after that, immediately, they started pounding down our throats the hide under your desk and cover your head in school. They were having us do drills, bomb drills, because of Russia. Russia, Russia, Russia. Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, it's a weird world. So what do you all think about the theory, more than a theory, that Satan made God to try and control him? Literally remade. And that's how Christ came about. Because he thought he was going to have somebody of his own strength that he can control, but it backfired on him because God knew what he was going to do, and they pre-planned to put him in check. to put him in the flesh so they could capture him on this plane of existence for a teaching tool. Actually, so God wouldn't be lonely and the angels could learn what real procreation was without screwing things up, but they didn't do good. But it wasn't anything any woman did or Eve. I tell you, she was raped. So, which would technically be from her own offspring. Which is why, and they perpetuated that bloodline through the mothers who carry that bloodline and ended up creating more diseases in human beings because they didn't understand what they were doing. And it took all this time, centuries, to bring it back around where people could think clear enough to be able to pull themselves out of the, what is the word, marther, you know what I'm trying to say, pull ourselves out of the swamp, basically. So it's like God was sleeping because Christ has always been here. It's just that he wasn't awake enough any other time to realize what happened to him. We all kind of had our suspicions that we existed before. Did we die? Were we killed? I'm saying we were probably killed many times over just to get to where we are. And maybe even some suicided themselves or whatever to keep in line with the army that God formed right now. So this is all true. Let's see, what else is going on? Hotter than hell, and my OCD is crazy today. When I can't get things done that I want to do, and I have other things to do, it's kind of overwhelming sometimes. It's like, and having OCD, that kind of goes along with my dyslexia and trauma I've suffered and whatever. Some days it's harder for me to not be agitated from that. And it's a real thing. It's all real. But OCD is a way of trying to control something that's out of your control. And it is, I guess, they would consider emotional or mental disorder along with my dyslexia, which I am telling you, it has more to do with a physical anomaly than it does anything. Whether or not the physicality is in my brain or my heart, they don't care. They'll just label it whatever it is, you know? So, and yeah, reading is hard enough to learn even without a disorder. It's some weird shit, isn't it? Yeah. Have you ever studied any of the languages like Sanskrit or like Syrian or anything? The writings of it and the symbols, or even like the Chinese symbols. How interesting is that? That you can take one symbol and take a line off it or something and it'll mean something completely different, you know? Or put a circle somewhere or whatever, you know? It's pretty amazing. And then it can be spoken and communicated and is all connected with other languages. And you can find iterations, variations on languages within languages, the way people traveled in the world, that's telling onto itself where these people went. If you would think, okay, would you ever think that somebody in Norway could be more closely related to Emperor of China, say, than maybe even Japanese or Korean or whoever? But that's true. Yeah. And Norway is a big deal to the Dark Cabal and not really talked about much, and people aren't very aware. They're kind of more aware of what would be like Bohemian Slavic or like the witchcraft of like like I say, like a Slavic nation or something. They'd be more aware of that than they would of thinking anybody in Norway and witchcraft, you know. But there's where a lot of it comes from because they're so tiny, and people would never think that the Dark Cabal had traveled from the Far East or even Africa or like the Phoenicians and would end up in Norway and then travel back into Europe and populate it like that. And they did. And the rest of the world. Yeah, they're all over the place. We can't just pinpoint one country where the Dark Cabal is. I'm sure you're aware of that. But their connection and their system and, just as much as what God would know of making a system, Satan would, but in an adverse manner for destruction, because that's all he can do. He cannot create, he can only tear down. That's what he found out. And it all results in death. And without the Christ Spirit, without acknowledging that you have a Creator, He's our Father, His name is God, and He thought me up, and He thought you up. And it wasn't what came first, the chicken or the egg. It's that the chicken, well, okay, the egg has a shell, and then you have the white, which is the protein that the yolk eats. Or, the chicken will eat the white before it hatches for that strength. That's kind of symbolic of a baby being inside of its mother and being born. And then if you think of how God could think himself into a woman and be born onto this planet, that is how one single entity named God made us all. True. That's exactly what happened. He was the thought. Now, in what Rex Bear presented last night, of course, the Vatican lied that it was the woman who was the thought. Oh, yeah, she had thoughts, but not of the creation. Her thoughts are, my thoughts are from the Father, just like yours are. And we're not creators, He is. So they're still lying, is what I'm trying to tell you. Yeah, they are. And there was a lot of lies in that presentation, but I already was instructed on how to spot the lies and stop the lies so they can't be perpetuated, leaving the woman to blame. And they aren't going to blame God because He can snuff their asses. So, can I? I don't know. What do you think? Probably not. But I can ask God. You know, actually what it is, and I've told people this before, if you do something to me, it's going to go back on you and you'll be cannibalizing yourself because of your own thoughts. So that's the truth. That's what like the Barbara chakra, the image of the serpent eating its own tail. That's what that means. That's exactly what it means. Well, Christ is going to come in and he's going to pull the head of the serpent out of its own and help it out because he is of love and everything is a part of the Father. And that's how he was created, to go through the sea of people to rise up now to help us. Something that Satan thought he could control by recreating what God had already created and making like copies. It's not a clone. We're not clones. We're still who we are, and that's only one of who we are. And we will always be who we are, who God made us to be. Always. Once that spark of that soul is made, that's who you are. Well, everybody, I'm going to get this uploaded. I love you so much. I'm just going to try and tell you this is a spiritual war, and the only way that we can make this learning ground for everybody a little more peaceful is not backing down to any kind of evil. Wherever you confront it, and I do mean confront it, don't let it go. Just don't. You know, that's the way it is, and we will judge the angels. That's what you're here for. Don't think you're not, and don't let them make you feel like you're not worthy or capable of that. If that's what you feel is your mission and that's what you're put here to do, don't sugarcoat and candy coat nothing for these demons. You're just as demonistic. That just means demon isn't a bad thing. It's like the word angel, messenger. It's the same thing, only with the same capabilities of they have. Have you ever been around somebody that can fry your brain out just with their thoughts? Well, that's what's going on here. So, and some people are capable of that. Can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. So I think I'll leave it on that note, everybody. Cheers to you. Have a really wonderful night or day wherever you're at. Peace and love from Pine City, Minnesota, USA.